In the final days of World War II, as Nazi Germany collapsed under the advance of Allied forces, American troops encountered scenes so horrific that they would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. One such moment occurred on April 29, 1945, at Dachau Concentration Camp, a place that had stood for 12 years as a symbol of Nazi terror. What followed would later become known as the Dachau Massacre, one of the most controversial and emotionally charged episodes of the war's end. Dachau was the first Nazi concentration camp, established in March 1933, just weeks after Adolf Hitler came to power. Originally intended for political prisoners, it quickly evolved into a prototype for the vast camp system that spread across Nazi-occupied Europe. Over its 12-year existence, more than 200,000 prisoners passed through Dachau and its subcamps. Tens of thousands died from starvation, disease, medical experiments, beatings, and execution. By the spring of 1945, Dachau had become a place of absolute collapse. As the Allies closed in, the SS evacuated prisoners from other camps and forced them into Dachau, overcrowding it far beyond capacity. Food supplies had vanished, sanitation had broken down, and typhus spread unchecked. Corpses lay unburied. Living prisoners were reduced to skeletal figures, barely capable of movement. On April 29th, units of the U.S. 45th Infantry Division and the 42nd Rainbow Infantry Division approached Dachau. Before they even entered the camp, they made a discovery that set the tone for what would follow. Near the camp's entrance stood a train of open freight cars, more than 30 of them, filled with the bodies of prisoners. Many had been dead for days, starved or shot during transport. The stench was overwhelming. Some American soldiers vomited. Others stood in stunned silence. When the gates of Dachau were finally opened, the liberators were confronted with scenes beyond comprehension. Emaciated prisoners stared with hollow eyes. Bodies were stacked like firewood. Barracks were filled with filth, lice, and the sick. Survivors later described American soldiers crying openly, shaking with rage and disbelief. These were not battlefield deaths. This was systematic murder. The guards of Dachau, primarily SS men and camp personnel, were still present when American forces arrived. Some attempted to surrender peacefully. Others tried to flee or hide among the prisoners. By this point, many American soldiers had already seen multiple concentration camps, but Dachau's scale and condition pushed emotions past their breaking point. As control of the camp was secured, a series of spontaneous reprisals occurred. American soldiers rounded up captured SS guards and camp officials. In one of the most well-documented incidents, a group of SS men was marched into a coal yard within the campgrounds. There, American soldiers opened fire with machine guns, killing dozens of guards in seconds. Estimates of those killed vary widely, ranging from around 30 to over 50 in that single event. Other SS personnel were shot individually or in small groups as they attempted to escape or after being identified by prisoners. Survivors pointed out guards who had beaten or murdered inmates, and some former prisoners attacked SS men with bare hands, sticks, and stones. In several cases, American soldiers did not intervene. Chaos reigned for hours. There was no coordinated order from high command to execute prisoners of war, but discipline had fractured under the weight of what had been discovered. The rules of war, carefully upheld across years of fighting, suddenly felt meaningless in the face of industrialized murder. U.S. Army officers eventually restored order and halted the killings. Guards who remained alive were taken into custody. An internal investigation was launched almost immediately, known officially as the Investigation of Alleged Mistreatment of German Guards at Dachau. Military lawyers interviewed witnesses, collected reports, and attempted to determine responsibility. The investigation confirmed that SS guards had been unlawfully killed after surrendering. However, no American soldier was court-martialed. The inquiry concluded quietly, and the report was classified for decades. In the aftermath of Dachau, the U.S. military leadership faced an uncomfortable truth. Men trained to uphold military law had been pushed beyond its limits. Historians continue to debate the Dachau Massacre. Some describe it as a war crime, pointing to the execution of surrender prisoners. Others argue that the soldiers' actions were an understandable human reaction to the overwhelming horror they encountered. Not a planned atrocity, but a moment of emotional collapse after witnessing genocide firsthand. What cannot be denied is the context. Dachau was not a battlefield. It was a factory of death. The SS guards killed that day had served a system that tortured, starved, and murdered civilians on an industrial scale. For many liberators, mercy felt like betrayal, not of law, but of humanity. The prisoners of Dachau were finally free, but freedom came amid death, confusion, and trauma. Thousands were too sick to survive even after liberation. Typhus continued to kill in the weeks that followed. Doctors worked around the clock. But for many, liberation had come too late. The Dachau Massacre forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Can justice exist without law? Where does moral responsibility end and revenge begin? And how does absolute evil distort even those who come to stop it? In the years after the war, Dachau became a memorial site, not to glorify revenge, but to remember the victims. The story of its liberation, including the killings of SS guards, remained a reminder that war does not end cleanly. Even moments of victory can be stained by blood. The Dachau Massacre stands as one of history's darkest ironies. A place built on mass murder liberated in an act of violence born from witnessing that very crime. It is not a story of heroes or villains alone, but of humans pushed to the edge, confronting the consequences of unimaginable cruelty. And perhaps that is its deepest lesson. When systems of dehumanization are allowed to flourish, they do not only destroy their victims, they corrode everyone they touch, even those who come to tear them down.